Welcome to my review of Season 4 of The Shield. If you're new here and have just stumbled across this video, be sure to check out my reviews of the previous seasons of the show and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the videos. So as I mentioned in my review of Season 3, it felt like Season 2 was building to some major changes in the show, shaking things up. But when Season 3 came around, it went ahead and essentially slowly undid these changes. Aceveda staying on, Danielle winning an appeal and being back on the street, things like that. Well, it seems like the paradigm shift that was promised has now occurred. Aceveda has indeed left the barn. He's not in this season as much as previous ones, and he essentially has a kind of go-between role between the Farmington PD and the political guys. They even changed the music in the opening, previously on the Shield recaps. If you ask me, the original was way better and sounded more exciting and adrenaline pumping, getting you in the mood for the high-octane show better. Veteran film actress Glenn Close joins the cast of The Shield as the new captain Monica Rawling, a tough-as-nails, no-bullshit, hard-nosed character who has a very hands-on and radical approach to policing. There are many radical choices the captain makes, like choosing to live in the hood, but to the annoyance of the likes of Aceveda, she takes a liking to Vic and his maverick ways, choosing to back him and utilising his talents when conventional methods fail. Vic thrives under Monica, who gives him a long leash so long as he's able to deliver on the streets, but her ways are controversial and cause rifts in the barn. The main issue with the new captain is her seizure policy, something she's a staunch, zealous defender of and is willing to lose her job over if need be. This is an asset forfeiture program designed to clean up the streets, whereby essentially, if drug arrests are made, said arrestees can have their cars and homes taken from them and auctioned, with the cash made partially going back into the community and some going into funding the police department. I think there's a lot that can be said about this program. Maybe it's something we can discuss in detail in a future video, and I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on it down in the comment section below. On one hand, these homes and cars and such are purchased through drug and blood money. The criminals are punished, and that money can be then used to help the impoverished community. I do think the new captain was sincere in her belief that she was doing the right thing and the seizures were good for the people. The initial seizure of the house bought with drug money comes off as a major win, for example. But then we have one where a guy who had like 3 weed plants that he sold to old folk having his house seized when there was no proof that the house was purchased with drug money. And that was just to intimidate a witness into not testifying. There's an excellent scene of the captain being confronted in the police station by the mother of a drug dealer who's now lost her home thanks to the new policy. It's powerful stuff. It gets to the captain, but she does go ahead and evict her anyway. There's another scene where cops brazenly and shamelessly discuss finding Vic a new nice car to seize instead of actually doing their jobs. I mean, how far does this even go? Can you have a family of 2 parents, 5 kids and a baby, with the father well educated and having provided for his family for years, but then one of his kids gets caught with a bit of weed and the entire family's house is taken away and they're put on the streets? I've got loads of stuff that I don't have receipts and records for. Why should I have to prove on a random stop that my stuff wasn't bought through drug money, lest it be taken away by the cops and I have to go into debt fighting my case in court? The burden of proof should be on the cops making the claim. The captain's plans ignore the human element in all this. The fact that there will be innocent people who can be threatened with having their assets taken, who could straight up have their houses taken away from them. There's a monetary incentive for police to pursue these kind of cases and arrest, which opens up a slippery slope to all-out corruption and daylight robbery by the cops, which the police in the Shield like Vic don't need any more encouragement in. It sounds interesting on paper, in theory, but in actuality it sounds very difficult to pull off and very easy to abuse. There is that feeling of punching down, which the Shield showcases very effectively. The fact that the community feels marginalised and targeted, and why shouldn't they? I mean, I almost forgot to mention the crazy new rule about gang members not fraternising with other known gang members, otherwise facing an arrest, which, as the show hilariously points out in one scene, means one character can't even be seen talking and walking with his own brother. The likes of Julian take umbrage to the seizure policy for the way it attacks an already struggling community which has little other means to success without dipping into illegitimate means. There's also the racial component to consider, which Julian showcases by putting a spin on things with his arrest of some tattooed white guys who are clearly not gang affiliated, as the eye-rolling Danielle would point out, but technically he's following the new rules that have been laid down and he wants to prove his point. The community themselves push back against the new policy, seeing it as thievery instead of criminal repossession. Antagonism between cops and civilians increases, and it potentially even leads to the death of 2 officers. The intentions behind the program may have been good, but it leads to corruption and discrimination. Certainly, at the very least, it's noteworthy that those characters, those police, who aren't exactly the type that we might consider wrote down to protect and serve as their main reason for joining the force, Vic Mackey in particular, come across as vitalized and energized under the direction of the new hard-nosed police captain, who maybe has bitten off more than she can chew, misunderstood the day-to-day issues of her community, and surely is destined to crash and burn somewhere along the way. I did get the feeling from this season that the unsavory types who see themselves as soldiers in a war and don't mind locking up an innocent person if it means being able to exercise some authority would thrive under Monica, whilst those who actually want to serve their community and see it prosper, like Julian, would get lost among the generation of the Western District Way cops that emerge under Monica's reign. In fact, she says she's going to transfer him at one point, meaning dissidents to the new way of doing things would be removed under her watch, like some kind of dictator. Surely the new captain didn't have such tunnel vision that she wasn't aware she was spearheading a policy which, if it became a widespread movement picked up in other districts, would be abused and used against innocent people. At the very least, Rawling should have warmed up to Acevedo's compromise idea of waiting for convictions before auctioning off seized properties. Monica thinks it would be too slow, but the result is a completely insane system where an innocent man can be arrested, released without charge, only to go back home and find out his house is no longer his. To sell the property of a person who's already likely hard up just on a mere assumption with no proof is such an easy path to corruption that I can think we could just stop already and say the policy itself is corrupt. And surely, if successful, it would get to a point where the police force would get so used to the money coming in that they won't be able to function without it, meaning that they would actively need drugs and gangs on the streets to essentially pay their bills, reinforcing the status quo of the war on drugs in the first place and not changing much in the long run. The execution of the program was diabolical, and at the very least could only work if there were strict procedural safeguards in place to protect the rights of people. 3 things in particular come to mind if this program could ever go ahead, I feel. As mentioned, she should have made it so that the auctions can only be done after a conviction, with the convictions upheld after appeals. Number 2, the assets themselves should only be those ones where it can be proven that they were obtained from illegal means. Number 3, that the cases should be reviewed and managed by a civilian board that has no benefit and vested interest either way. I feel like Monica is a very idealistic, intelligent, but politically naive character who had her goals and her mission in the right place, had to turn a difficult tanker to get her radical ideas cemented in the force, but ultimately was doomed to fail in one way or another, if for nothing else that she is not really a realist. I take it from the way season 4 ended that we won't be seeing the talents of Glenn Close again, but I do feel with many of her actions, especially towards the end of the show, that if she continued as captain she could have ended up very corrupt. She had all the hallmarks, with her contentment at cutting corners to achieve immediate results and going beyond the law to ensure certain arrests towards the end of the season. I mean, even before this, what with her seizure policy, she put mothers and children out into the streets, often deciding on a whim and whatever mood she was in at the time. All the potential for an out-of-control dictator that would need putting down. Anyway, she's a very interesting character, and the seizure forfeiture stuff was a really interesting narrative for season 4, but we've spoken a fair bit about her now, so let's kind of move on now. One of the most noteworthy elements of season 4, continuing the shake-up trend, is the strike team being disbanded. Tensions were high, of course, at the end of season 3, with Lem burning the money, Shane and Vic having a big argument, and in this season, Shane is working Vice with a new partner. Lem's now doing something with disadvantaged kids, so in the beginning of the season, it's just Vic and the other one working a boring undercover cassette tape case until Monica loosens Vic's leash, and ever so slowly, over the course of the season, the gang gets back together again. But that's not before some major arguments and tensions, including the very real possibility of Shane having to murder Vic after getting too deep with a drug kingpin. Walter Goggins was really great as Shane this season. The actor has a lot of opportunities to flex his acting muscles, and he uses these to such an extent, I would argue, he was the MVP of the season, even outshining Michael Chiklis as the lead. This was, of course, Goggins' breakout role, and I do wonder whether Shane's development was always intended, or the showrunners saw this guy and thought, hey, we've stumbled on a really great actor here, why not use him more than just as Vic's number 2? The main antagonist of this season is Antwon Mitchell, a kingpin who is released from a lengthy prison sentence and attempts to reinvent himself as a community leader, when in reality he's perhaps the biggest, baddest player out there. Shane tries to get into a partnership with him, but gets in over his head when Mitchell takes out a teenage girl and blackmails Shane and his new partner, because he killed her with their weapons, leading Shane to go to his old best pal Vic for help. Portrayed by Anthony Anderson, he's a great character and he has some great scenes, especially one towards the end of this season where he is provoked in an interrogation room and his traumatic past is brought up and he tears up in anger. But I gotta say, and this isn't the actor's fault, but I struggle to take him seriously at times, only because I pretty much know this guy as the funny fat dude from the Transformers films.
Shut up, Grandma! Grandmama, drink your prune juice! Get off my grandmama's carpet! She don't like nobody on the carpet!
And it was hard to see him in this as a criminal mastermind. I had the same issue with him in The Departed too. The character is a little OTT as well, I feel. With him being so powerful, he has ties and links with the Salvadorian mobs, the Russians, all sorts. The Shield doesn't really feel like that kind of show, where there's a powerful, overarching villain who's constantly outsmarting the cops and beating the system. And so I can't quite say that I'm going to miss Mitchell if this is indeed his time on the show done. I've been looking online, and incidentally, I've frustratingly spoiled some stuff for myself from upcoming seasons, but doing some research on Season 4, it seems critics were a little less kind to Season 4 of the show than others. I wonder why that is. I mean, I thought it was a good season. I tend to have this feeling watching each season of the show that, yeah, it's good, but it's not as good as the previous season. But then every season seems to up the ante around halfway through, finishes strong, and I'm left unsure of how I'd rank each season. This one does feel a little more streamlined, with a singular bad guy and a lot of focus on the seizures. Not a lot of classic Vic and his guys running around chasing down bad guys. It's kind of its own little thing, isn't it? Whilst the first 3 seasons definitely have more of a connective flow with each other, but I'm fine with that. If you have a few seasons where things feel like they're on the same level, and then another one comes along that does things a bit different, it's no problem if done well. I've heard it described as a bridge between the first half of the show and the second, with what's to come really going to bigger and better places. Maybe it's gotten a rep as, oh, that's the Glenn Close season, right? You know, funnily enough, for all my talk about Season 4 being the one to shake things up, if anything, it's done a job returning things back to the status quo. By the end, the strike team is back together, with AID sniffing around. Julian and Danielle have mended fractures in their relationship, and the guest stars, Anthony Andrews and Glenn Close, presumably are bowing out of the show, the latter of whom I initially had question marks over, but she ended up giving a fantastic performance. So what do you make of Season 4 of The Shield? Let me know in the comments section below, subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.